Welcome to Romance Rex, where three book besties explore the world of romance novels and encourage you to expand your TBR. Join us as we dive into the hottest releases and hidden gems of the genre. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Romance Rex Pod. I'm Jordan. I am currently reading Succubus Blues by Rochelle Mead, and I am listening to You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi.
Hey guys, I'm Dev. I just finished reading Face Off by Chelsea Curto, and I actually also just finished listening to This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan.
Hi guys, I'm Christina, and I'm currently in between books.
Love that for you. Book break.
Buckle up for some bookish banter.
Very
Ooh,
specific
let's go.
bookish banter.
Yes,
One book.
we got a good episode. We're talking about one book today.
Which book?
The book to book all books.
Today we are talking about the second installment, or fourth, depending on how you look at it, of J Bree's Mortal Fate series, and the book is The Throne of Honor and Blood. I love it.
We're going to start with a quote from this book specifically, and we're going to keep it going because we have lots to talk about this book. So we got to jump in.
I have a quote from Gage, who is a goblin prince. You meet him in book 1, but in book 2, there's a lot going on, and he says, "With all my respects to you in the Accords, Prince Sorin, but if he speaks another word like that about your fate's blessed mate, I'm going to commit war crimes. If the lieutenant at his side doesn't take his eyes off the Ravenswood mother, I'll bleed him out and let the forest feast on whatever paltry power his blood can offer." I love that.
So
I love that. I love the way they ride for Rook. So, yeah.
All the men.
Exactly. Yeah, Gage is just chef's kiss.
I love Gage. I'm going to go because I'm going to let Christina end this up because I know what she's going to do, and I think that's a good one to end with.
Oh, yeah.
So mine isn't necessarily sexy, but it kind of encapsulates Rook as a character and just her mentality and where she's at this point in the series. It's easy to believe a lie when it's crafted against the injustices you face. And although I may not look upon the witch armies with empathy, I'm also not oblivious to their reasoning. I love it. It's
very
so
worldly, very timely.
Applicable to all worlds.
Ours included.
Exactly. No, Christina, what do you have?
This is a quote from Sorin, and this is specifically about the wedding robes that his bride is wearing. So he says, "Those robes are an act of war. Their intention is surely a form of torture so merciless, I cannot believe that the noble and guileless favored children would be responsible for their design."
He is so bothered. He is so bothered by it.
I need fan art of this dress.
I need fan art of so much of the clothing so bad. Oh, yeah, you could do the robes. That's a good idea.
I'm imagining like Feyre's dress, but white. That's kind of what I was imagining.
I imagined a lot more, but just like they open as you walk. I imagine like a lot of robes, but like they just...
Like when
See, everyone imagines it differently.
Yeah.
That's why I want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's why someone needs to do the artwork for it, because I would love to see those robes.
So if you haven't guessed...
J Bree?
If you haven't guessed by now, don't listen if you haven't read it or if you don't want all the spoilers. We are going to go through the entire book and we're going to talk about it all. So if you want to read this book still and you haven't and you don't want spoilers, come back, save this for later. The way we're going to do this, I think, is I went through the book this weekend, and I summarized every chapter. So I'm going to do a relatively quick synopsis, basically of the whole book, but we're going to do it in bits and pieces. So kind of in fourths is the general idea.
Before you get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, we need to actually drop a disclaimer. 2 things, really. Number 1, real quick, we're not going to linger on it, but the release and the editing. Yes. So number 1, if you've been following J Bree and team, the release of this book was not great. It was actually pretty horrific. Yeah, very disjointed, but it happened. It is what it is. We have the book now. It's just definitely not the greatest release, or the way that this book should have been birthed into the world. So we'll say that as it is. We acknowledge that the release wasn't the best. We're not going to ignore that. The second thing, if you have read the book, you also know that the editing of this book was pretty bad, especially the second half. And yeah, so that's a thing. We are acknowledging that. We're just choosing not to harp on these things. There are plenty of comments that you can go read about people talking about those things, but we're actually just going to focus on the content of the book, the story, the plot, the characters, just for this episode. Saying that, though, we can't dismiss the fact that there were some pretty major red flags surrounding the release and the editing.
And we don't have any ill feelings towards J Bree or her crew. It just, things happen.
It is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is.
We just want to enjoy the world.
Yeah, we just want to be in the
right
world.
Now, that's what we're about.
Mm-hmm.
Prologue, really quick, just to acknowledge, it's from Rowan's POV, where he went into the mad forest. And
didn't this happen a few hundred years ago?
Yes.
Quite a
few hundred years ago, because Rook wasn't born. She wasn't even the mother yet.
Yeah. Her mother wasn't the mother.
She was the maiden.
So her mother was the maiden still?
At this time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She saves Rowan. But she saved him, if you remember, his people were being attacked by the Blood Witches.
Yes.
That is the interaction, it's the experience he had with the Blood Witches. So that little Easter egg was even in there in the prologue. She knew, though, she made a comment that she knew that Rowan's fate was tied to her daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So
she knew a lot.
His son.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It was a fun little prologue, I thought. But
yeah, I enjoyed it.
They didn't do anything with it, which was the biggest issue to me. He never talked to Rook about knowing her mom. He knows that was her mom.
Mm-hmm. He never brings it up throughout the books.
Which makes me think he has something more to do with his fate later on, because Airlie even mentions that she knows most of Rowan's fate too. So there's more to his fate than just Airlie.
Yes, and his son, for sure. Yeah, I think so. I think he's hiding stuff. I did see some commentary online about, I think people are really hung up on the last line of the prologue, or I think it's the last line where Rowan says something about never betraying Soren. And so I think it looks like, I didn't get this feeling, but people were very much looking for some betrayal from Rowan throughout the book, because they assumed that's what that meant. Whereas I personally took that as Rowan basically saying that tying himself, accepting help from the witches, being a part of this witch's daughter's future would be a betrayal to Rowan. I mean, to Soren. That's what I took it as. So just a tidbit from stuff I've been seeing. Yeah, I think that's what I got. Because we didn't even talk about that as it standing out as anything bigger. So
no, and even in my reread of it.
Yeah, I think it just is what it is, like how he feels about the witches.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to buckle in. I'm going to read my synopsis of I'm going to go 11 chapters. It's the first quarter of the book. So the first book, we leave off with Rook passing out and Soren catching her. He's covered in witch's wane. She is exhausted from the battle. Everything is covered in witch's wane, which will kill witches, drive them insane. And there is absolutely no cure. There's no ibuprofen for this. There's no Advil. There's nothing to make it
no
go away.
Spell. Not a tincture in sight.
It opens with Soren going crazy, trying to get Rook to safety through all of the witch's wane. He struggles to walk away from her, and we get our first glance at his territorial ways when Rook wakes up with PTSD from her time in the Fates War. In the north, Soren attempts to offer help. He's there. He wants to help to find her brother, and she snaps at him and shuts that down real fast. So to stay busy, Soren takes up sparring, and he becomes increasingly territorial over Rook over the next few days. His alpha hole begins to show. Aura is still a bitch throughout the naming of her grandson, Raiden, and everyone gives him little blessings, and it's adorable. Rook goes down to the village once she has enough strength to help rebuild. Word reaches the castle that Carl is expanding his hold and claiming more land for himself, and it's apparent that Irel, I forget what the castle, like how do you pronounce that? Irel is about to be attacked. They also get word that the Soul King sent an emissary to the regent and wants to invite all leaders to a meeting or party next year. It's going to be so exciting. So everybody's freaking out about that except for Rook. Rook finds solace back in her garden, and Soren starts to ask her questions and confides in her about his theories that the regent is working with Carl, which that's a big moment for them, is sharing ideas. Since waking after the fight, for Rook must keep fighting her memories and PTSD of the Urine. She shares some of her history with Prince Soren, but they soon travel to Urel with their army. For the first time in centuries, High Fae give an offering to the Elms Walk Forest during their travels. That will aid them in the battle to come. When they get to Urel Castle, they must deal with Prince Mercer and his ignorant guards in court. Though it weakens her to do so, Rook places a ward around the castle and helps fight off 10 battalions of witches, which a battalion is 555 soldiers each. When Rook heals Nightspark, Soren's horse, after the battle, he strips the witch's Wayne-covered clothes off of himself and rides her back to the castle. It's a big moment. It's adorable. Despite Rook being weakened and injured, once again, Mercer insists on a ball to celebrate their victory over these witches. There, Rook accepts a duel and wipes the floor with the sniveling High Fae, even though she's super... I mean, she's worse than hungover here. She's not doing well. And in a show of absolute sexy rage, Soren demands a chair for Rook next to him in a place of honor and makes a statement to all those there. And he loses control over his magic when she is again disrespected. So that's the first quarter. It's a lot, but not a lot.
Yeah, that's a pretty concise summary, though. There are tons of moments in between those, but that's like a good flow of like how the story is. That first quarter, we get to see Soren, number one, be territorial and just like super possessive of his
quietly.
Yeah.
Because Rick doesn't realize what he's doing and she's still pissed at him.
Right. As the reader, he's very loud. Soren is very loud. Yeah, he is very upset. There is so much growling. But yeah, he doesn't tell Rook and she's not really noticing. And I don't think he's turned up. Besides the loss of his like control on his magic at Mercer's castle, that's one of the first big times where he shows it to everyone. Like, y'all need to stop treating my mate crazy.
This is mine.
Yeah, and also that he has magic, which is also kind of a big deal as well. Yeah. Regardless of whether or not anyone else picks it up. Because I reading that scene, I wasn't sure if anyone else thought that was a big deal. I feel like no one made it a big deal.
No, it was quiet. No one really wanted to draw attention to it. I think like Rowan even gives him a side eye during that. And I think some of them are wondering if it was really him. But his eyes
maybe
glowed.
They're in disbelief.
His eyes glowed, so I think it's pretty
obvious. Yeah.
No one wants to say, hey, did she do something to you? Because that's probably what they're all thinking.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, that was a good summary of those chapters. I mean, thoughts, feelings. I personally, to start out the gate, I was worried about Soren's groveling because when I tell you I wanted to see him on his knees begging for mercy, apologetic about the things that he said and also the fact that he kept his mate in the dungeon for all that time, I really wanted to see that from him. I'm sad we didn't get that, but I do think hearing his internal monologue helped a lot. Because one thing Soren doesn't do is hide his feelings from you, the reader, at least. He says what he wants to say with his chest in his head. He's not like shy about it. Like,
well, he admits it to himself. He's not in denial anymore.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, he's not denying it.
A lot of books will do that, where the main character is still denying it, even when they see the proof that they were wrong. But he's leading with actions. I want to hear Christina talk about her thoughts about that, though, because I know hers is very different than ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember early on reading and saying that I already forgave him. And I know you guys were waiting for the groveling, but I was just...
You forgave him book 1.
Yeah.
I didn't forgive him book 1. I just said I didn't hate him book 1. But in beginning of book 2, when I heard his internal monologue, I'm like, okay, I was forgiven. Let's move on. Be done.
Yeah. Yeah, because he does say a lot. He says a lot in that internal monologue. And if you're like strictly waiting for him to grovel, you will honestly never get that throughout this. You will not get that, unfortunately, which I do think we should have had a little bit at least. He's definitely more of a I'm going to tell you I'm sorry with my actions, which is also really good. It's just not what we were expecting, I guess.
I like how they start to open up to each other, though, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, and it's just little ways, right?
Yeah.
Looking back on it, while she always gives what she feels like she can, now we know she could have been giving a lot more of information at this point, and she's still holding it in.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and you look, actually, Soren really opens that door of trust between them when he confides in her his theories about the Regent working with Carl. So
yes,
thinking about it that way, he was vulnerable with her in a way that a commander and king can be. Right? He showed her that respect.
I think he was a lot more honest with her than she was with him.
Oh, for sure.
At this point, he's starting to be. This is the turning point where he starts to open up more, and she shares, but she's like clinically sharing.
I feel that way throughout the whole book, but
yeah,
that's just my
Well, book one, she shares. I mean, she shares what she has to. He doesn't share anything. So that's why I'm saying this is the turning point where he becomes more open with his trust of information.
Yeah, and I guess that does track because book one ends with Rook saying you're going to have to beg me to, whatever. And while we don't see her making him beg, we do see that like her withholding, right? Because at the beginning, she was just going with the flow. The fates have led me here. I'm here. But yeah, book two, we kind of see her shifting. No, you actually don't deserve me. Yeah, you're going to have to work for it. So you're right. Soren is the one to reach out and open the gates of communication between them.
Yeah. And she's there physically. Like she will be a presence. She will be there. She will listen. But she does not contribute.
No.
Unless she has to and it's for the greater good. It's very selective.
Yeah, she stays quiet a lot.
Yeah, she's very much Aelin, Ash River, Whitethorn, Galathinius.
Yeah, she's very like quiet, plotting and scheming, making her own things.
Moodier.
Yeah, way moodier. And I don't know. I guess also thinking about that, right?
Yeah,
not even a little. Baby been wearing the same boots for 200 years. There is no materialism. Okay, she been in the same black-brown boots because we were undecided what color they actually are. If you notice that little thing in the story, that little plot hole. Is that a plot hole?
Continuity.
No, I have nothing else.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Yes, thank you. So I did have one theory that I took note of during his whole show of power and Rook's internal monologue talking about Fae power, and also, and we can bring attention to it as it gets brought up more about Fae power. It's kind of a theme throughout this, and I'll share at the end my big theory about him. But my theory about High Fae magic is that the Fates gifted it to the High Fae. It's fate. It's like directly from the Fates. That's why witches gave their own people as seers to converse with the Fates and help, and that's why they originally helped the first High Fae.
Yeah.
That's my theory about where that power comes from, because the witch's power doesn't come from the Fates. It comes from the even older gods, older than the Fates, and the world itself.
The earth.
Yeah. Well, it says in the first book, it talks about how each forest was an old god. There is a greater being that is the forest. So that's my theory, is that's from the Fates, because that came about the same time that the first Fae came over, High Fae. And it was gifted to them, and that's why it's a part of them, and it belongs to them. It was mentioned.
Right, and there's someone who has direct connection with the first Fae in Rook's group. I'm just making that connection right now, like just realizing that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, wait till we get to her character. Yeah, I mean, at this point we're still slow burn, right? At this point we're not enemies. But we're definitely not lovers.
No, we're reluctant allies on Rook's part. Yes. And he's just like, look at me.
He is chomping at the bit. He wants her. This is his woman. And if another guard, if another male, if another being looks at her again, he will level this castle. That's the vibe he's bringing to the table. And Rook is just cute. Remember when you kept me in a dungeon?
Because I do. But also, I was there because I wanted to be.
Confusion.
Should we move on? The next part is more exciting. This is chapters 12 through 20. This is the second half of part 1.
Okay.
chapter 12 literally starts out with Rook saying she still doesn't care for Soren and says she doesn't think he's redeemed himself yet. Even after that show of power in the Grey Room, like her inner monologue is good for him. That doesn't change anything. She hates the careful way he moves around her, but when he gives an offering of magic to the lake on the way home, she starts to see that he is changing. That's the moment for her where she considers that he's changing. On the ride home, Soren asks Rook about her family very carefully and about the Goblin lands. So she starts to teach him Goblin. Once they're back at their home base, the next shipment arrives along with Prince Gage and Rook's latest gift. So the gift is a scared high fae in the carriage with a tiny bit of pixie in there. We learn her name is Thea. She's deaf and mute and came to Eurus when she was abused. That's where she came from, sorry. So that's where the regent is holed up. That's like their capital, where she was abused and mistreated for the last few decades. In true dramatic Fates fashion, we learn that Thea is Terran's mate, and that's why he's been such a morose dick. Soldiers from Murel come and join Soren's ranks, and Soren and Rook bond over weapons and judge the new recruits. So it's very much two commanders flirting about what's going on in their ranks, and I thought that was really cute. While Rook works with Thea to help her heal her trauma, the group decides that they need to start healing the forests so that they can use them as safe spaces from the betrayers. A nightmare slips through their mind connection and wakes Soren. He rushes to her naked and helps bring her back to herself. They bond and talk over tea while watching the sun rise. Terran opens up to Rook about his fate, and Rook takes it like an emotionally adjusted badass. Rook and Soren set off alone to begin healing the Brindlewood forest. When Soren attempts to make an offering to prove himself to the forest, they show him their memory of what happened to its coven and little baby Hanid and how his life started in bloodshed. They cuddle in the forest that evening, and it's adorable. The next morning, Rook talks with him about how high fae magic is different from hers and how little she knows about it. They leave camp when they are alerted by the presence of other high fae. They find the regent's men standing against Prince Gage and only a couple dozen of his men. Norok provokes Soren by disrespecting Rook, so Soren takes his head off and slaughters most of his men. Gage needs to get to Eurus. How are we pronouncing that? Riss?
I say the Y. I say it like that. Iris, Irel, Rhaegar. Yeah.
Some make sense to say and some don't. So
yeah.
I
Eurus.
thought it was
I'm
like
gonna say Eurus.
Iris.
No,
The Y says I at the beginning of a word.
Right. I like that too, but then it doesn't work with Irel, or I guess it's or Rhaegar. I don't know.
Eurus. I'm gonna say Eurus. We're gonna say it really quick.
Yeah. Maybe she'll release a pronunciation guide for the next book.
Gage needs to get to Eurus to save his mate, so they accompany him through the Fae door. Rook is shocked by how beautiful the outer city is until they get into the gates of the capital, and she feels how purely evil the land is. All its people are living dead. They get to the castle in the sky, and it's covered in blood and death. That is the end of part 1.
Yeah. This is definitely where the story picks up a bit, which we completely glaze over the fact that Soren and Rook have now shared a kiss, haven't they? By this part in the story?
I don't think they kissed when they cuddled. No. Their first kiss.
When do they kiss?
Not yet.
When do they kiss? In part 2?
Yeah.
Is it in the
okay, never mind then.
Time?
Yeah.
On the way back.
Okay, I thought it was on their way there.
We'll get the hot springs.
Okay, so ignore this little part. I thought it happened already. Yeah.
No, they were very close that morning after they cuddled.
Fully clothed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that when he told her to take her boots off?
Yeah.
I highlighted that because I'm so emotional. For me, that was the sweetest thing. He said, take your boots off. And literally that's all she needed. Number one, she's like a child of the forest, baby. She don't need these boots on.
But
she needs to be connected. But he recognized because she was squirming. She was like so uncomfortable, couldn't relax. And he just goes, take your boots off. That's just like the most sexiest thing I think he could have ever said. That was one of my favorite lines. I remember highlighting it, thinking, this man really is changing. That's
Here,
cute.
let's back it up a little bit, though, earlier in the synopsis, because I want to make sure we talk about Thea, too. And I know that is Christina's that's one of your favorite parts about the book. At least that's from what you talked about. So you should lead that charge.
She's so sweet. I don't know if the little asshole that's her mate deserves her, but...
Well, he was mad because of what was happening to her, right?
Yeah, no one knew.
Understood. That's understandable, but blaming an entire people you don't know whether or not they're doing it to her just because you think it might be is ridiculous.
And even when you know better, you still don't adjust yourself right away?
Exactly.
Right. It takes you a long time to adjust when you should be adjusting right away. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I agree. You're right about that.
I love how Rook could communicate with her because Rook has taken the time to learn about all the different people and their different languages across the land, which was great. Yeah, I love how she took under her wing and started training her as a healer. I was like, oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
But her trauma was just so hard to read. It was really like, when she opened up about it, that's when I was crying reading this book.
That's tough.
It was heavy.
It was very heavy. Thea's character, I think, is going to be someone that we get a lot more from later on. I think she has a lot of secrets that either she's too afraid to share, unwilling to share, or honestly too traumatized to share. But I think eventually we might be getting a lot more of her story. And I'm very curious about that. I'd love to know. I'd love to know who her parents are.
I think
we're
it's the
seeing
regent.
So many theories. And yeah, so everyone said
it's the regent.
I read something where someone said it was Aura, and that just that blew my mind a little.
I thought about that at one point too. No,
number one, I don't know because technically Thea's young enough where she would have still been under the curse, right? So I don't know how
she lived because she was Pixie, and then
her
mom or someone that cared for her gave her a name
and gave her a good name.
A sign,
right? Exactly.
Like meant cherished one.
Cherished
one. Yeah. So someone loved her, but also
it wouldn't be. No, I was just gonna say it can't be her. Otherwise, Airly would have part Pixie in her too, and she could have had a kid.
I think Aura's. No, I think it's the man who, like, let's say,
it was the dad.
Maybe Aura does have someone she loves. Yes, with someone she loves, because we'll talk about her relationship later. But we know that Aura's current marriage is not. I mean, fate's blessed, but not like a loving fate's blessed relationship. Yes, it's not a love match, and I think there's a possibility that maybe she has this love match baby with someone else. And I don't know. It would be Aura is at the bottom of my list. There still needs to be more data, but I've still got my eye peeled
because
the regent makes sense.
Knew that the regent is trying to become an ancient, or not an ancient, but like to cheat death, live forever. They haven't mentioned
live forever essentially.
I was imagining something like the regent and like a kitchen maid or something. Like he forced himself upon somebody else who wasn't full
absolutely.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I think that's the most believable track, honestly, to think.
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't think it could be a lower fae because she presents 100% high fae, and the only reason that we know she isn't high fae is because Rook could sense her blood and knew it was a tiny, tiny part Pixie.
Right. That's why I think her mom is high fae.
I think it's someone that hid it and then got caught once there was a baby.
Yes. And then let's say it is Aura,
Rook says
and
that.
she was taken. Yeah. She says something about that.
Oh, once they got pregnant and they delivered, they must have known that it wasn't all.
Here's another reason I think it's the regent, because later in the next section, we learn once they're at the castle, Soren says her 4 sisters, and Gage goes, no, there's only 3. So one died or went missing. And I'm wondering if instead of killing him, he just sells them out and to other lands. And that is how, I mean, I'm sure he kills some of them. But
or since her carriage went missing, he just assumed she was dead and declared her dead.
Or he told Sari that she was dead and she just sent her off. To me, that could be that.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think those are like very easy explanations for it. My fear is that knowing the type of writer J Bree is, that's too easy. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I can't even. Yeah, I feel like
the
the plot behind, exactly. That's how I feel about it. It could be the regent. She could literally be Sari's missing sister. There's no doubt in my mind. That's just how the story wraps up. But when I think about J Bree as a writer, I'm just like, you're skilled. So I feel like if that's too easy, then what is the most extreme thing we could think of?
Yeah.
She's Aura's daughter. She's a half sister to Airly.
Or Aura's husband.
Or
He had
that.
an affair.
Or that. That's interesting.
I mean,
but I will.
We just know she's royal.
Because I think she would figure out that that was her daughter in the castle. And I think we would have seen her freak out before now. I think we would have.
But she's never seen her, though.
She knows she's there.
Aura
she knows she's there. She's heard about. Aura knows that there is.
At their castle.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't know they'd let her know.
I think everyone knew because it was announced when they were out in front of the wagons. Soren made the announcement. No one is to go in there. No one is to do anything. Like, this is.
She's high face. She could hear all of that. She could hear all those conversations.
The gossip. She would be
for sure
about that.
Yeah, that's true. What were you going to say, Christine?
I was going to say that their obsession with pure blood is just absurd. So.
Yeah.
I think it only got heightened because of that curse. I think it only became worse because of that curse, right? Because then any tiny little bit was outed.
Yes.
True.
And so they probably became resentful of anyone that could have a baby.
Like, why do you deserve to procreate? Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying that I can see
that's
them, and that's...
It's just
for
absurd.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And they already think so highly of themselves. That's super believable. So yeah, we get Thea, and Torin, which is also a plot line I can't wait to follow closely. I want to see their relationship kind of unfold. Hopefully Thea warms up to the idea. It's not clear whether or not Thea knows that he's her mate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
they didn't have any interaction at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure just if the fates were whispering or singing to her, because she doesn't, I mean, she's so traumatized. She could just be not listening, or however the fates work in that way. So yeah, I would love to see that aha moment for her. Hopefully when she's like a little stronger, she can take on a little more. I'd love to see them interact by themselves. That would be really nice to read. And then where else? What I was thinking about all the other things you discussed in that little segment. There's so much. This is where like the story really starts to kick off. We see Soren finally release some of the pent up rage in his body and just off Norok and all those soldiers. And honestly, y'all, that was like a highlight. He was sick of it. He just went and killed that man in front of everyone. And we know that we're here because Gage has a mate inside the castle, and Gage has just received a vision from his mate that like he believes her life is in danger. He needs to get to her. He has waited long enough. He is impatient, and he is willing to take on the regent himself to get to his mate. That's where we leave off.
He knew he couldn't go get her until the favored child returned.
That's also part of it.
Yeah, he's been...
He'd been waiting already a few months.
Exactly.
Well, years before that, but he's been waiting a few months.
Right, a few months. Exactly. And now it just makes it even more clear why he was like, do you want to come back with us? Can I help you anyway? Like, do you want to leave? I'll take you home right now with me. He had an underlying motive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's really sweet. And it's also just sweet to see their relationship, him and Rook. So now we're at Rhaegar. This is part 2, right? Sorry, we're not at Rhaegar. We're at Iris.
Christina wanted to talk about something, and I just want to say that this part is like that part that we just talked about is when I fell in love with Soren. When I was okay, I'm a Soren stan. This is like for kind of the turning point.
Definitely, absolutely.
But I think Christina, you wanted to talk about the town, like our first impression of it.
I want to know more about this. Like, about why everyone is dead. Are they truly dead and like animated corpses? Or do they just feel dead because there's like shadow magic or dark magic or something? That's what I want to know. Are they really actually all dead?
That's unclear to me too. I don't get it.
So there's a couple comments throughout the part 2 of the book that relates back to this magic that she feels. She makes a comment, when we'll read here in a minute, about when the blood witches come in to play. And she goes, this explains a lot of what I was feeling. But also, in regards to the whole town, I think at the very end, when she steps into that magic circle that Carl has left behind. She says it feels just like the evil and the undead, but on a way higher scale, a more amped up version of that. So to me, that implies that Carl is pulling the strings at that castle and
so
contributing
he's
to that.
Been doing some maybe bad magic on everybody.
Like siphoning the life out of it.
Yeah, maybe siphoning their magic.
Oh, yeah, because we know he siphons his army's magic. And what I'm assuming that what little magic those Fae will have in them, if he removes that, because they all have, they all have at least a tiny thread of magic within them, whether or not they can feel it, right? So if he's pulling that, then they're like dead. The land is dead. There's nothing there. So that is very interesting.
Because the magic feeds
the
land. So if there's no magic, it's being siphoned out. The land would feel dead because it is dead. It has none of its life-giving magic.
Yeah, it has nothing. Yeah.
But then I wonder if the regent knows or if he doesn't quite understand that, because that's how Carl could take the castle easily.
Right. I wonder if he can feel it. He doesn't know. Because even Soren was
they don't use money to barter, though. Everything is just there for them because these people are like empty vessels. So
yeah,
I feel like he has to know something.
I thought the no money thing was more like because they're all just so rich, they're using all the resources of the rest of the world and just at their expense.
That's what I thought at first, but then she says when she looks closer at everyone selling, she sees that every single person selling is just glassy-eyed and dead.
So maybe some kind of spell.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be some kind of spell like indentured servitude or something, like where they're just there to serve these high fae or something. Yeah, I definitely would like more of an explanation in the next book, whatever comes out, about what's going on at the castle for sure. That would be helpful.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of our deep dive into The Throne of Honor and Blood by J Bree. We had so much to say about this book that we made it into 2 separate episodes. The best is yet to come in part 2, so go ahead and press play on that next episode. If you are new to Romance Rex, please make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Romance Rex Pod. Keep reading, and we'll see you soon.